Well, hi there. You're watching and or listening to North of Weatherfield, a Canadian Coronation Street podcast. Don't step on my line, Shannon. Okay, now you can say your thing.
And this week we are talking about episodes that aired in Canada from May 20th to May 24th. So if you haven't seen those episodes already and you still want to,
avert your ears.
Yeah, because this is just going to talk about everything that happened, which if you were away somewhere nice and you can't be bothered catching up, this is the perfect way to do it.
I thought you were going to tell them off for that. Anyway, let's play the theme. Shannon, what are we talking about this week?
We're going to be talking about Roy, briefly talking about Liam. We're going to be talking about Paul. We're going to be talking about Nick, Leanne, Toya, and Rowan.
Okay.
George, Adam and Alya, and about Steve.
That's pretty good. All right, let's get into it.
Well, who are you?
Oh, that's right. My name is Brittlestar.
My name's Shannon.
But these aren't our real names, of course. My real name is... That's Billy.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You weren't quite mahogany enough.
No.
But
I mean, give it a month or two. I might, Oh, wow.
Listen, let me tell you, there's been enough of this. You're just glad that you don't have anything to do with it. You're just glad that Roy's taking the fall for you.
I thought we had to choose characters, not just be ourselves.
And I spilt a bit too. Didn't work as well as I'd hoped.
Oh, you really did spill quite a bit there.
I know.
Well, it's hidden by the microphone. For those watching, you won't be able to quite see it, but trust me.
I was being Nina.
That was Nina. That was really good.
She was drunk in the pub with
Yes,
Bobby.
that was good. Just in general, that's captured her attitude.
Thank you. Would have been better if I hadn't had the microphone in the way.
There's sort of a genuine horribleness to her attitude.
Can I put this here now?
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
All right. So first of all, we are going to talk about Roy.
Okay.
So Roy had his second bail hearing, and he's a bit hopeful.
Yeah.
Because everyone's been telling him there's a good chance that, with this statement of Bobby's, new evidence, maybe he'll get out.
Yeah.
But he's denied bail because he had previously been on bail and
Right.
breached his bail
Right.
conditions by, tussling with someone till she fell over.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yep, I agree.
So after sort of watching everyone in court and hearing what the evidence was, Roy summons Carla to come see him in the jail.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to her, I don't think the story's true. I think that Bobby made this up. And Carla's like, no, it's all true. It's all true. And he kept pushing, and eventually she was like, yes, okay, we made it up. Bobby made it up, but I didn't want him to, but here we are. And it seems to be a good thing. And so Roy was upset because he said now all three of them are complicit in this.
Yeah.
lie.
Well, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. And right after Carla left, Roy went to, I can't tell, is it a phone in his cell?
It's a phone in his cell, which I find a bit weird.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not really familiar with. I'm not up on British prison stuff.
Although maybe that makes sense if you're not convicted of anything.
Yeah, maybe. He's just being held.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he puts in a call to D.S. Swain to say that he would like to see her.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, Nina has gone to go visit Roy, and he doesn't appear. And she eventually convinces the prison guard that they should go and look for him because she was pretty sure he was going to come this time, but he's been a bit afraid to leave his cell.
Yeah.
They go looking for him, and they find him unconscious on the floor of his cell.
But that's not really a surprise because he hasn't been eating.
He hasn't been eating. Yes.
Yeah.
But it was still a surprise.
Well,
I just thought he'd be sitting there moping, saying he didn't want to see
I
her.
expected it. As soon as I saw it, I was like, that's about time.
And so they take him to Wethy Jen.
Yeah.
And so Nina goes there, and she arrives just after Carla. Carla has arrived. Roy is still unconscious in the other room. And she asks if she can go in and see him. And Roy's usual prison guard is now his guard outside his hospital room.
Yeah.
And he says, nope, you can't go in because your name's not on the list of visitors. And she says, well, I was on the list. And he said, oh, it says here, Mr. Cropper removed you yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they find out it's essentially dehydration, it's malnutrition, not eating or drinking anything. He's going to be fine. D.S. Swain arrives because she had been going to see him at the prison, but he was in the hospital. She goes in to talk to him. Roy's going to tell her everything, but he looks through the window, sees Carla standing there, can't quite bring himself to throw Carla under the bus.
Yeah.
So he just pretends that he wanted to talk to D.S. Swain for an update.
Yeah.
Swain was not very pleased with that. Roy's in trouble if he tries to pull that again.
Also, Roy's not very pleased with that.
Roy's not very pleased with that. After she leaves, Roy summons Carla again.
Yeah.
And basically
says, put her back on the list.
Put her back on the list for 10 minutes.
For 10 minutes.
And says to her, that's it. We're no longer friends. You know how much I value honesty. And we obviously can't maintain a friendship after this.
Right.
And so Mary visits the next day. And I quite enjoyed Mary's visit.
Mary's visit was great because it was like she came in, her job was to provide company, to lift his spirits a little bit.
Yeah.
Provide some mental stimulation.
Yeah.
And she has succeeded in all those things,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. Very chipper. So Roy was telling her that he'd been struggling to recall a conversation between Max and Lauren.
Yeah.
That he thinks might have an important piece of information
Yeah.
in it. So Mary describes to him how to use visualization techniques.
Which is the one issue I had with that scene was that Roy said, what is that? I was like, Roy would know what visualization is.
I don't know. I don't think he's one for the mumbo jumbo.
I know, but I think he's so well read. He would know.
I think he's well read in books, not in.
They talk about mumbo jumbo in books.
Yeah, but you got to choose to get a book of in the library out on it.
I don't know. I wouldn't say visualization is mumbo jumbo.
No, but meaning it's going along with like that, just tapping your inner, whatever, things I'm not good at.
Yeah.
Examining my feelings.
You're just hung up in Western medicine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then Roy asks the guard, who has said to him, you can call me Dave when we're not in jail.
Which was nice.
Which was very nice.
Yeah.
And bring him a pad of paper and a pen. And Roy confirms he can keep that with him when he goes back to his cell because he's heading back. And when he gets back there, he has it ready to make notes and he practices the visualization techniques.
Yeah.
And he remembers, you can hear him now, he's hearing the conversation between Max and Lauren.
Yeah.
And it seemed that maybe he was focusing on a necklace.
On the necklace.
That Lauren
little
had.
pendant on the necklace. Yeah.
And so then he wrote down his notes. So here's my question to you. What is Roy remembering or what is he thinking?
I don't know. I don't know why he would focus on such a seemingly unimportant conversation. But then it was focusing more on the pendant, on the necklace.
Yeah.
So obviously he's seen the necklace, whatever that shape is or whatever it is, he's seen that somewhere before.
It did look quite unique.
And I think it was a pattern recognition.
And it was, I couldn't tell if she maybe got it from the mystery boyfriend.
I think that was the idea.
Yeah.
Because she was talking about, because Max was talking about her boyfriend and she was clutching the pendant and kind of like toying with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
What I also liked about Roy's flashbacks though,
yes,
is when they start, there's a film projector sound effect.
I knew you'd like that.
Which is pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it gives too much credit to how accurate his memory is, though.
Yeah, well, maybe. Exactly.
Liam, we're just going to talk about Liam briefly.
Okay.
So Nina tells Maria that she saw Liam in the calf and he was very anxious.
Yeah.
Checking his phone as if he was worried about something.
Yeah.
He was using his inhaler a couple of times.
Yeah.
Which.
The inhaler thing was.
It's like it does. It's not.
Could just be asthmatic.
It would. Because he is asthmatic.
Exactly.
Remember from the smog?
From the smog.
The pollution,
that's
the cars.
Right, exactly. It's definitely not COVID.
That's right. It was around the beginning.
It was around the COVID. And they were like, I thought when they were talking about that storyline, I remember back then it was like, they're going to address it.
Oh, because he passed out. Yeah.
They're going to address this.
Yeah.
This is going to be amazing. And this is going to be a nice teachable moment.
Yeah.
No. Just the smog.
Yeah. And so Maria panics. She's going to go call the school, heads off to do that. She's home later on in the day. She's home talking to Gary. Liam's in his room. They don't know Liam is overhearing them. And Maria's telling Gary that she's waiting for Crawshaw to call back, but she's really worried.
Yeah.
And she says to Gary, I can't take any more time off work. We can't afford it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what we're going to do. I can't
Right.
homeschool him again. So Liam seems to process this. And later on, when she's checking the computer, she's like, oh, who was looking at this martial arts site? And it's like, do you think it was Gary?
Well, it could have been. What's the little one called?
Oh, that's true. Jake.
Jake. Could have been Jake.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. Is Jake there full time now?
Wait, is Jake the name of the kid?
Yeah. Izzy and Gary's kid.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's there full time or not.
Yeah. So anyways, Liam tells her that he has signed up for these martial arts courses at the community center.
Wonderful.
So great. I'm a little concerned.
Why?
Well, because does this mean he's getting ready to proactively fight Mason or someone?
Initially, I would have said that a few weeks ago, I would have said that. But I think now he's just doing it to build his self-confidence.
Right. Okay. Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
You know my whole thing with Coronation Street. Everything's going to be just fine now.
Paul.
Yes.
Speaking of things that aren't going to end well eventually.
Our Apollo.
Yes. So Paul and Bernie are headed to Amy's radio station because he's going to be interviewed on her brand new podcast for the uni. So they've called a cab, and Paul had requested a cab that was going to be able to put his chair in the back, which I don't know what kind of cab is going to take an electric.
All he said
wheelchair.
was, I want an XL cab. And it's like, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
He needed to have like a mobility
bus so that you
type
can
of
stay
it.
in
So you could just stay in and get lifted up on a hydraulic thing or ramp in or something.
Anyways, he seemed to have a plan.
Yeah.
However, that cab didn't show up. Another one showed up, and the guy was like, too bad. You'll have to call again.
Yeah.
And just
that was
wait.
horrendous.
Yeah. And then when Paul arrived at the station, they came up to Amy's, and he was saying about when they arrived, he wanted to use the toilets, but the accessible toilets were kept locked so that the students weren't just using them.
Right.
So I really liked this, having people in my family with accessibility issues. I liked this part of it because people who don't need accessible options don't think about these kind of things. I remember working at a school, and the elevator, it was just keys given to the kids who needed to use it to get between floors.
Right.
And it was pointed out that actually for accessibility laws, everyone has to be able to access it. They don't
access
have to,
the accessibility.
They don't have to share their reasons of why they need something to be accessible.
Sure.
So same with the washrooms. You're not allowed to keep them locked.
Yeah.
Because anyone has a right to say, I need an accessible washroom.
Yeah. Is it going to be abused? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
However,
yes.
you've got to just teach kids and have punishment to be like, you don't abuse it. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah. But anyways, apparently they all came out with a whole bunch of packets of Quavers because that's where the Quavers were stored for the cafeteria.
I missed that part.
Yeah. That's because you're on your phone. Remember when I kept telling you to look up?
I was probably making notes for this show.
I don't think so.
Might have been.
So I liked that part. And anyways, they did the podcast, and Paul was talking about those accessibility issues. And he was also they were talking about funding cuts and the fact that his MND group have lost their free space provided to them by the council.
Right.
And that they don't know what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he accidentally swore on the air when that was happening. Amy, being the veteran radio
broadcaster, she is.
She smoothly covered it over and pressed all the buttons for the music.
She knew what to do.
Yeah. It's like she's been doing it forever.
Yeah. Didn't know how to work any of it before, and then just sat down by this huge like spaceship console.
I know, and now she's got all the slogans.
Yeah.
The little glib remarks. Anyways, her boss called her afterwards, and she thought she was going to get chewed out for Paul swearing, but actually she was very pleased with it. And Radio Weatherfield wanted to cover the same story.
Yes.
Which I like how we've never heard of Radio Weatherfield
Radio
before.
Weatherfield? What the hell's that?
So then it's on the radio, and then we see some dodgy looking guy sitting in a car listening to this.
Yeah.
And he writes down Paul's name, Weatherfield, on his newspaper.
Before we go further, can I just say it? Because that was the scene where she said, "Oh, Radio Weatherfield are going to play it as well," and she grabbed a radio, a shelf. What do you call those kind of radios?
Transistor radio,
Like a transistor radio, like a dedicated radio machine.
Yeah.
Pulled it down onto the thing. The Radio Weatherfield are going to play it too, and then just turned it on. It was just music playing. Like, how does she know when it's going to come on?
plus
And is it coincidentally right then?
Yeah.
Are they going to listen for an hour and a half and then hope it comes on?
I don't know. That's why we moved away from them to the dodgy guy in the car.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Yeah.
Dodgy guy in car. Right, here's Paul's story about the fundraiser, writes down his name and where he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then next thing we know, this guy shows up at the calf and confronts Bernie. And it turns out it is Danny, who is Bernie's ex and Paul and Gemma's dad. Who I don't know if he was ever really in the picture because all of their stories were growing up with mom's different boyfriends. So I think.
Yeah. And that stepdad guy who was
abusive.
Yeah. And then it turns out the dad was abusive as well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, I have a right to see my son if he's dying. And she says, well, you're too late. If you heard it on the radio, it must have been a rerun. He's dead, which I thought was a good tactic.
I didn't.
I thought that was fair enough. Worth a shot.
No, absolutely not.
But he didn't believe her. So she headed off to go to the flat to tell them instead of like texting them or something.
Yeah.
And he followed her. And then she didn't make sure the bottom door was shut.
Yeah.
And then apparently went all the way up the stairs without realizing she didn't hear it click shut.
But it took Danny ages to get upstairs though afterwards.
I think he was waiting for her to go up so that he could come in and close the door so that nobody gets in behind him.
Right. True.
He's more responsible than
Yeah,
Bernie.
maybe.
So Paul and Gemma are shocked to see him.
Mm-hmm.
Gemma is raging mad.
Mm-hmm.
Paul is a bit more forgiving because I think he realizes he's only got so much time left.
Yeah.
If he's gonna
doesn't need to carry a grudge.
He's gonna make amends.
Yeah.
Now's the time.
Yeah.
And so his dad says, well, let's just go out for a cup of tea. And first of all, I thought that's a big, it'd be hard knowing how to help Paul maneuver to get down those stairs. And back in his
exactly.
Electric chair. But anyways,
requires some skill.
They magically did it.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed up in the Rovers.
Mm-hmm.
His dad was like, we're not going for a cup of tea. We'll go to the pub.
Mm-hmm.
Convinces Paul to have a pint. And Paul's just started wearing a neck brace to help, I think, keep him so he's swallowing okay and breathing okay.
Yeah.
Keeping his neck straight. After, I think on the second pint, or maybe it was the shot that came after, Danny convinces Paul to take off his neck brace.
Yeah.
He's got a straw.
The straw thing was cool.
Straw was great.
How it held it to the side of the glass and down. Yeah.
But anyways, Paul is getting tipsy, and not only because he was drinking a lot, but because he's not even really drinking beer much anymore.
No, because it
makes everything more difficult.
Yeah, it makes everything more difficult. Yeah.
And then Paul knocks a drink, breaks a glass, and Jenny very kindly comes over and says to him, I think you should go
you've
home.
had enough.
Yeah.
Time to finish up.
So Danny says, well, let's grab a couple of cans on the way back to the flat.
Danny.
Which they do.
Danny.
They get back up to the flat, and now it's Bernie and Billy there.
Right.
And Bernie is raging. Paul has never met Danny before. He's not impressed. And they ask Paul if he wants to put his neck brace back on. No, he's fine. And then while they're fighting, the three of them, Paul throws up.
Yeah.
Because he's drunk.
Yeah.
He's probably also not swallowing very well with his neck brace on. And Danny gets kicked out of the flat by Bernie, who follows him out.
Quite rightly.
Yes. Who follows him out, chews him out, and says, you have to leave here. Like, why are you here?
Yeah.
I don't believe you just wanted to see him before he dies.
Yeah.
You have a motive.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, nothing. And she's like, you have to leave. And he says, I won't leave. And then he threatens to, essentially, it seems like he has some secret over her.
Over Bernie, yeah.
That he's going to let out if she tries to deny him from seeing Paul. And so here's my question.
I'm ready.
What does Danny have over Bernie? Is it a legal matter, or is it a personal matter that the kids would be horrified if they found out? Is he going to dob her in for some crime back in the day?
I think maybe Bernie isn't Gemini and Apollo's mom.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Right?
No.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't.
Why can't you imagine? She just raised them.
Huh.
Got them when they were babies from somebody.
Do you think he's the father?
Yeah. I do. And that's why he's holding it over her.
Oh, intriguing.
Then he can say, listen, it's not even your real mom.
Huh.
Not that it would have any major bearing, but she would be horrified maybe at that.
Yeah, it'd be a shock.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Huh, okay. Well, if that comes true, I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well, you just wait.
All
Other
right.
than that, everything will be totally fine on the street.
Totally fine. Speaking of totally fine, Nick, Leanne, Toya, and Rowan.
Oh.
So Rowan shows up at the bistro.
Every storyline I go, oh.
I know, right? Rowan shows up at the bistro in person to see Leanne. He's in town for a conference.
Mhm.
And he says to her, well, we're going to do your uploading. Why don't we do it in person?
Oh.
And Leanne, who's at the bistro, which is starting to pick up and get busy,
Yeah.
says, that sounds great. See you, Nick.
So there's our food cycler in the background. So.
Says, see you, Nick, and just heads out
Yeah.
and leaves the bistro and goes back to the flat to upload with Rowan. Toya shows up not long after that, and Nick is in the weeds with everything.
Mhm.
And they had all agreed that Toya wasn't going to work for a little while
Yeah.
because it's been a bit of a traumatic time for her recently. And Toya's like, nope, I want to keep busy. I want to help. I'm going to jump in. I think also a little bit of a screw you to Leanne because Leanne was with Rowan
Yeah.
doing the institute stuff.
Sure.
Yes, so she jumps in to help. So Lee is back at the flat uploading with Rowan.
Yeah.
And she is talking about
Let's not normalize uploading as a term.
air quote uploading.
Yeah.
Yes.
Confessing to.
Confessing, yes.
Yeah.
Following the Institute's guidelines.
Yes.
And she tells him all about her past, like her sex work she's done in the past.
Yeah. She bears
which
all.
was actually quite emotional when she was talking about
It was
that, I
very
thought.
emotional. Of course it was very, because it has tremendous value, that
Yeah.
private information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the restaurant fire.
At the restaurant fire.
And I don't know if she said anything else specific that we knew about, but
Yeah.
at least we saw those ones. So then it turns out that Rowan has been recording the session,
Yeah.
unbeknownst to Leanne. He's just had his iPhone recording it. When Leanne meets up with Toya afterwards, and she encourages Toya to try to do the same thing, she said, I feel like so much better. I
Yeah.
feel so much lighter after doing all this. You should really try that to talk about Rose, about the baby that Toya had lost when she was a teenager. And Toya says, I'd much rather talk to you about it. It actually really was helping when you and I were talking about it. And Leanne's like, nope, I can't take that on. I don't want to talk.
And just shuts her down entirely.
Shuts her down.
Shuts her down and with a bit of a smile on her face and says, nope, can't deal with this right now. Sorry.
And I respect Leanne saying, I can't take this on
I
right
respect
now.
boundaries. Absolutely.
However-
you've got to speak up and say that.
Yeah. However, it seemed more like she just thinks now the only solution is the Institute.
She's thinking she's in her the subtext of that shutdown to Toya from Leanne was just go sign up yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
pay the money and deal it.
Yeah.
And just do it yourself.
And then your problems will be solved.
Yeah.
So then Leanne comes to Nick with an idea during a session with Rowan. Because she seems to discuss a lot of business stuff with him.
Yeah.
She's decided that Rowan has decided that they should try Damon's pop-up idea again.
Yeah.
And Nick is mildly interested in it. He's not super keen, but he's like, it'd be a lot to take on. And he said, I'd do it if Toya would manage it.
Yeah.
And Toya's like, no,
Not gonna
that's
do it.
Not for me. I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Then Toya later comes in and says to Nick, I have a great idea for the business to get more help. We can employ ex-felons,
Yeah.
get a subsidized rate.
Yeah.
Everybody wins. They get job experience, a chance to prove themselves.
Yeah.
We get, subsidized labor. Leanne comes in as Toya is telling this, and she flips out.
Shuts that down.
Yes. And again, shuts it down more cruelly than necessary.
Yes.
I get why
Yeah.
you might be concerned about having
Sure.
people who've maybe
It's not going to be a smooth road.
yeah. And your customers need to feel safe
Absolutely,
and
for
secure. So
sure.
I get that, but wouldn't even discuss it.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, it seems to be Nick and Toya on one side and Leanne not really interested in what anyone has to say. But here's my question to you. Is Rowan recording for straight up blackmail? Or is it just a means to ensure she stays with the Institute and is just constantly paying in that manner?
Yes to both.
Okay.
I think it's insurance to make sure she never leaves.
Yeah.
And because he'll say something really sweet like, well, I do have to post all of your information then.
Right.
People need to know who they're dealing with.
Or kind of like if we aren't in this sort of priest congregant relationship, I can't keep secret that you set the fire to the restaurant.
Exactly. I've got to go to the police or something. And then also he's going to use it for if the Institute starts to lose money or doesn't make enough money, he's going to do something nefarious and he's going to use that information to keep Leanne quiet.
Ooh, right. So she finds out that he's just essentially stealing money.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Look at all your good ideas
I
this
know.
week.
I know.
So briefly, George. So Eileen has made George show Todd the will that he found.
Yeah.
Where turns out Archie had left the funeral home to both Glenda and George.
Yeah.
And I thought last week that George had been hiding that will, but it turns out it was a newer version of the will that George hadn't known was there.
Yeah.
And so George hadn't realized that Glenda was supposed to be left half of the
So he wasn't hiding it.
He wasn't hiding it, which I thought last week he was.
Yeah, me too.
So George can't decide what he should do with this. And he says to Glenda, if you won the lottery, what would you do with the money? And she immediately knows. And she's like, I would buy the Little Big Shots business and I would franchise it out.
Yeah.
And it would cost a fair amount to buy it because the woman who owns it, who came up with the idea, the business has a lot of debt. So she would only sell it if that debt could be paid
cleared.
off.
Yeah.
And I think that put George in even more of a quandary because it's like,
he's like, that's a dumb idea.
Well,
plus, why is she in debt?
I don't know if he thought it was a dumb idea. I think it was more like, oh, damn, like actually she does have she would have use for if he bought her out of the business.
But he did ask about the debt stuff. And it was a good question to be like, isn't it just in a room with a bunch of kids?
Meaning she could just start her own version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. It was kind of, I felt sorry for Glenda.
Yeah. Same. She doesn't know to feel sorry for herself yet.
No. Yes, true. Yeah. So here's my question. What is George going to do?
I think he has to fess up. He has to fess up and he has to say to Glenda, listen, I didn't know this, but apparently you're supposed to be half owner and he's just going to have to cut her in. That's the best way to just cut her into the business.
It seems there's no question to me he'll do it because we all think George is a good person.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a good guy.
Why is he swithering so long though?
Because it's messy. Does she get all the money from the past number of years?
Mm-hmm. Or does she just start?
Or she start
today?
From today?
Mm-hmm.
These are big questions.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big man. But I don't know if he knows all the answers yet. Though.
Yeah. And he doesn't have Eyelash to help him out because she's off nursing Todd.
Not a fan of the Eyelash name.
Okay. Adam and Alya. So
will they or when will they?
So Adam calls Fabian's to set up an appointment, a time for the next day because they're going to go over their work they're doing. And Alya is part of the call. And Alya is being
smug.
A bit smug on the phone.
She's very smug.
They're both being a bit snippy to each other.
Yeah.
Somewhere between repartee and, I don't know.
Grade 4
meanness.
Yeah.
And as soon as the time is set, Adam hangs up in the middle of Alya.
And he loves
talking,
it.
And
he's toying with her.
Yes.
It's a will they or when will they story.
Well, it hadn't been up until then.
But Dee Dee nailed it.
Yeah. So Dee Dee was in the office during that call. And later on, she meets Alya for a drink. And she tells her, well, obviously, I heard that. Obviously, the two of you like each other. You've always had this tension between you. And
that's
Alya's
right.
like, what?
Yeah.
Really? I'm 9 months pregnant. No. She was sitting at a nice high table.
She was.
It was good. Yeah. And then Alya also tells Dee Dee in that conversation that she's going to be moving to Dublin, rather.
Yeah.
Actually, Adam said, London?
Yeah.
Dublin.
London. No, Dublin. Oh.
To work for Fabian's. And Dee Dee was all sad that she was going to be leaving. Alya and Rich, the new boss, show up for the meeting the next day. Dee Dee sort of sees them all while they're there, chats, and then she excuses herself because she's not part of that stuff. Alya and Adam were being super flirty with each other.
Yes.
Rich was touching Alya's arm.
I thought that was weird. At that one point where he said, oh, but whatever, we're so happy with her, whatever, and then put his hand on her like,
yeah,
baby.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, don't do that.
You're
with
her
a boss. You don't do it you don't do that to your employees.
Yep.
And if you're a dude with anybody, you just don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're setting up another meeting for the next day to keep going over it all. And they've decided it should be in person, not in Zoom.
Yeah.
As they'd originally planned. Dee Dee comes into the office later that evening to pick up some of her things. And Adam is working away, preparing for the meeting the next day.
Yeah.
And Dee Dee teases him that he's wanting to impress Alya by having done all this work. And then I found this very disturbing.
Okay.
Dee Dee said to Adam that Adam and Rich were like a couple of rutting stags over Alya. So here's my problem before I get to my question.
Okay.
It feels to me like this was lazy writing.
Oh.
That up until this week, they hadn't set up anything. I had not noticed a single thing between Adam and Alya.
No.
Before this week. Also, suddenly Dee Dee and Alya are best friends, that Dee Dee's super sad she's going to Dublin.
That was weird because like are you guys that close?
It's like I feel they're good chums.
Sure. But they were like best gal pals. They're like BFFs.
Suddenly.
Exactly. Plus also rutting stags.
That bit was
ugh.
Yes, it's like it's inappropriate.
The only thing that would have been worse is said they were moist rutting stags. That'd be terrible.
So did you see any signs that they liked each other before this week?
No, I mean, Adam's like that with everybody. He was getting surlier and surlier.
Yeah.
And she was just kind of the focus of that surliness.
Yeah.
Because his hair was good sometimes, and then it was not very good. And it was really good, and it was not very good. And that would take its toll on any man.
Yeah, it's true. It was good this week, though. Maybe that's why he was all cocky and flirty.
Exactly. I just like when he does the, every time he interacts with Alya or gets called and how he's interacting with Alya, he keeps his head down. He does it sort of.
Yeah, a bit of a side look. Yeah. Yeah.
For those listening at home, I was doing a great Adam impersonation.
Well, moderately good.
It was pretty good.
Also, as we as viewers all know, the actor that plays Alya is quite pregnant.
Mm.
So she is going to be going on maternity leave soon.
Yeah.
But now they've set her up with a best friend and a potential boyfriend who will both be sad when she leaves.
Just lock it in her contract. Maybe she'll come back then.
It's true.
Yeah.
Speaking of love, Steve.
Oh.
Steve.
Oh.
So Steve's potential date that he'd found on his app that he'd joined ended up ghosting him and deleting the app.
That was rough. That's a rough roll.
So he's at the pub with Abby and Kev
and Tim.
And Abby tells him that he needs to join a paid app if he wants to.
And Abby is 1,000% right.
Yeah, £16 a month, which
it's a lot.
Horrifies the boys.
But that weeds them out.
Yes. So anyway, Steve gets himself 3 potential new dates immediately, essentially upon signing up for this paid app. And he has already picked one, Carol, that he's going to have his first date with.
Yeah.
Tim and Kev have zero faith that Carol is going to be nice.
Yeah.
Because Steve has a terrible track record with picking women.
Yeah.
They're not wrong.
No, they're not wrong.
But and all 3 of them are discussing how terrible Tracy was. They didn't even go back as far as like Karen or anything like that.
No, I know.
Steve has asked Carol to meet him at the Rovers
But wait, can we just back up just briefly? Actually, I'll save it. Never mind. I'll save it.
It's maybe going to be one of the favorite moments.
Yeah.
You can do that one.
No, I've got a different one.
I have another. Steve has asked Carol to meet him at the Rovers because Steve wants to make sure he feels comfortable with where he is on their first date.
Okay.
And they're saying, yeah, that's the most important thing, that the guy feels safe and secure.
That's
in
right.
The meeting spot.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Carol shows up with a posse.
Yeah.
Who all insist on meeting Steve.
The worst.
And I get, you want someone to show up to meet.
She could have shown up with one friend who comes in, make sure the guy's not a weirdo.
Yeah. Make
sure things are going okay, and then says, okay, I'm going to go. I'll see you guys later. Yeah. And then they've set it up so that if there's any problems, she can call her friend back or whatever.
Which was kind of supposed to be the plan, because all those
But
women
she showed up with a million friends.
But they were all supposed to be going out on a girls' lunch, leaving Carol and Steve to their own devices.
Yes, they're just bad friends.
And Aurora, the loudest, mouthiest of them all, took a real shine to Tim.
Yes.
And because Steve asked Tim to help him out because he was horrified and terrified to sit with this group of 4 or 5 women.
This gaggle of women.
Yes. So Tim got roped into it. And Tim was unintentionally being charming. He was a funny guy.
Yeah.
Aurora was very taken with him. The other 55-year-old women head off to their lunch, but Aurora stays because she's getting right into Tim.
Yeah.
Steve and Carol are talking and they're getting along, but it becomes obvious that Carol doesn't fancy Steve.
Yes.
And
not romantically.
That's not going to change.
Yeah, it's not happening.
So Steve's a bit disappointed, but he gets it.
Sure.
And they're getting ready to go. Aurora doesn't want to go because wants Tim.
She's a party head.
To be fair, sitting there with his wedding ring on.
I know.
She's never made a comment on it.
He wasn't making any effort to misguide her.
No. But they were in some sort of tickle fight as Sally walked into the pub. And funny enough, that did not go down very well.
No, her lips pursed right up.
It's hard to believe that they can get more pursed sometimes.
They were.
Yes.
Yeah. Black hole just imploding on each other.
Sally drags Tim home, gives him a right talking to, and tells him that he can't hang out with Steve anymore outside of work.
Too far.
Because single Steve lives a life that will just get Tim into trouble.
No, too far.
Is Tim going to get himself into trouble, though? I agree it's too far to say you can't hang out with your friend.
No, I don't think he will at all.
But I think she is absolutely correct that Tim will get himself in trouble.
He might, but I think he'll get himself into trouble regardless. So he might as well be Steve's pal.
So the Steve stuff had a couple of my favorite moments.
So we're going to talk favorite moments now?
And lovely moments. So favorite moments. So these are moments of levity in the middle of all this.
Levity and brevity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
My favorite moment, levity moment, there's a number of them, but I'll pick this one, what you haven't written down.
Okay.
It's where Steve leaves after getting teased by Abby, Kevin, and Tim, and leaves his pint and takes his pint. Tim takes Steve's pint and pulls it over and says, I better take this then. And then lifts it to his mouth and he goes, Timmy, 2 pints.
Oh, I didn't even hear that.
Yeah, it was great. It's good. Timmy, 2 pints.
That's good. I liked, first of all, Steve arriving for his date in his jacket, looking all smartly dressed. And Jenny's like, look at you all dressed up. Do I smell a date? Oh, actually, I smell Lynx Africa.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Which is like Axe body
spray. I like
spray.
that.
Yes.
But then our joint favorite?
Our joint favorite was Steve, Kev, Tim, and Abby. They're all moaning about Tracy and how horrible she is. And Steve sort of defends her and says, well, she's a good mom to Amy. And do you know who it was who replied?
Kevin said, she killed her husband.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tim had said anything, but then, no, it must have been Tim who said that Tracy killed her husband. Kevin said,
didn't she sell Amy to Roy when she was an infant? And then my favorite part of that was Abby went, what?
I do love it. They've done it more recently on the show where they'll reference old storylines where the other characters they're big stories.
Yeah.
and they reference them, and the newer characters are like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes,
it was
and
like
that-
Nina going, Sally who? Metcalf. Come on.
Yeah. Yes, there were a lot of quite funny moments.
There were.
in this week's. For lovely moments, the number one is Steve and Tim sitting on the bench discussing how great they would be as a married
as a couple. Yeah,
and
that was
how they
nice.
would look out for each other, and they both were just their relationship is so lovely and supportive.
It is. It's really good. And I think it's really nice to see that demonstrated on screen for guys who are similar ages to me.
Yep.
It's like, you need to have good pals. That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're allowed to be vulnerable with them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got your back.
Yeah. So that was, I think, by far the nicest.
Yeah.
It felt very genuine.
Yeah, totally.
My other favorite lovely moment was Jenny having that special straw for Paul just in the pub, ready to go.
That was pretty great. I don't know if that's a common thing or not, or if it was just specific to Jenny doing it. But
I don't know.
It was good though. It was great. It was awesome.
Do you have any other lovely moments you liked?
No.
All right.
Nothing.
Okay.
I'm just looking forward to Roy. I'm desperate to find out what the conversation was that Max and Lauren were having and what the relevance of the necklace was. I'm desperate for that. Every time that his storyline comes back on, I get excited.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, yes, I want to find out.
All right.
I want to find out because I care about Lauren, Shannon. I want to know what's happened to her.
Can I also throw out another bit that was quite funny?
Yeah.
Bobby telling Carla that Simon had shared the Institute videos with him. And do you know that guy can manipulate the stock market and control it with his mind? Isn't that brilliant? Bobby is like, there is something to this. It makes sense that the only other person to buy into the Institute
would be Bobby. Chipper Chappy Bobby. Anyway, thank you so much for listening and or watching. And you can find us at weatherfield.ca where you can sign up and you'll get email notifications every time there's a new episode. You can also find us on your favorite podcasting platform where we have rocketed into the top. We were top 40, I think we were top 20. I think we were number 20. We were number 25. That's right. We were right below Bridgerton. That's pretty good. I think if we had a couple more sex scenes to North of Weatherfield, I think we could easily take over. That's what Bridgerton's about, isn't it? Sex scenes and big dresses and stuff.
Play the theme song.
Play the theme song. We played the theme song. There you go. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next week.